Hi, I'm Margaret Frisch Klein. I'm the rabbi at Congregation Knesset Israel, right here in Elgin, and a fairly new, again, Elgin resident, which I'm delighted to be, and always a great supporter of both Earth Day, now month, as well as the Gail Borden Public Library. So it's a delight to be able to do this. I was called in specifically to talk about the Jewish holiday of Tu Bishvat. Tu Bishvat is sometimes referred to as the New Year of the trees. It's the 15th of the Jewish month of Shvat. It usually happens in February. So why are we talking about this in April? Because it's the Jewish New Year of the trees, and so it's sort of like the Jewish Arbor Day. It's the day in Israel where the almond branches start to bloom again. And so the tradition has been to plant trees in Israel. Sometimes that's hard to talk about in February in Chicagoland. So there have been all sorts of other things that happen with Tu B'Shvat for the last 500 years, which is recent history in the Jewish community. So about 500 years ago, the rabbis in Sfat, in the mystical town of Sfat in northern Israel, invented something called a Tu B'Shvat Seder. Much like a Passover Seder, it has a set order. That's what Seder means. And you drink 4 cups of wine or grape juice. Instead of just red wine, you start with winter white wine and you go all the way to dark red autumn harvest red. And you mix just a little bit in each cup so that it gets increasingly darker and more like the cycle of the earth and the growing seasons. And then you eat 3 different kinds of fruits or nuts, some with a center pit, something like a date. The focus is always on Israeli fruits, but you can think of all sorts of stone fruits that have pits, some with a hard shell, like an almond, and then some that are entirely edible, like a fig. And in the course of that, you start to talk about all the things that the Torah, the Bible, the Talmud tell us about our need to take care of the earth. And that's a real mandate in Judaism, all the way back to like Genesis 1 and 2. And then in Deuteronomy, it says, if you are sieging a city, you cannot cut down its fruit trees. You have to leave the fruit as something sustainable so that the people who are being sieged, I'm not so much a person who thinks we should go out and make war, but if you were in that war, you have to leave them a source of food. So it says, you shall not destroy, and that gives us the Jewish value of Bal Tashchit, do not destroy. And that's taken for a whole lot of things that have to do with sustainability. And so one of the things that we do here at Congregation Knesset Israel is we have a community garden that we use to fulfill the mandate to leave the corners of our field. We don't really have a field on Division Street in Elgin, but we do have corners, and we have an edge between, I guess we might call it the parkway, but it's up on a hill. I don't know quite how to describe it. On the College Street side, we have 2 8-by-4 beds, so it's 16 by 4, and in that in those beds, we have gotten as much as 1,100 pounds of produce out that we have fed the hungry. Donations go to Elgin Cooperative Ministry soup kettles, to Food for Greater Elgin, to the Community Crisis Center, and to whatever neighbor might be walking by that wants a ripe tomato on a given day. It does a whole lot of things for the community. It gives our kids an opportunity to dig in the dirt. Some parents actually don't want their kids digging in the dirt. This always surprises me. Ooh, their hands might get dirty, or they might have germs. Some of those kids, though, ate their first Brussels sprout because we grew them there. And surprising to me now, the kids like to eat Brussels sprouts right off the stalk. They're not even cooking them. Brussels sprouts are an interesting growing vegetable, so you should stop by CKI and see what that looks like someday. So it gives our kids something. It gives our internal community something. Sometimes we grow herbs that grace our own tables at CKI. And that 1,100 pounds then for the neighbors, however we describe neighbors. And that fits, it's Leviticus that says, love your neighbors as yourself. That's part of it, but it's that same chapter that talks about making sure that there's plenty for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger. So the community garden is a piece of sustainability, but it's also a way to live out that mandate. The other thing that we celebrate during the Tu B'Shvat Seder is a story from the Talmud about Honi. Honi fell asleep. It's sort of like Rumpelstiltskin a little bit. And he woke up and he was surprised that somebody was planting a carob tree. And he said, "Why are you planting this tree? It won't produce fruit for 70 years. And the answer was, just as my ancestors have planted for me, so do I plant for my children and my grandchildren." And I think that that's a really beautiful sentiment when we look at the whole Earth Month concept, that we have this Earth. We only have this one Earth, and we need to sustain it for our children and our grandchildren. So we get all of that out of Tu B'Shvat and the community garden. I would be remiss if I didn't thank some of the key people who've made the community garden possible. Obviously, the Torah School kids and the education director, Heather Weiser, but also Robin Coyne, who has become the garden manager, and Brock Friedman, who has done a lot of the building of the beds, and Jerry Niederman, who comes over every Sunday morning and weeds and waters, and there are a host of other people who have been involved as well.